Hello, everyone. This is estimating training program, and this is just the introduction to essentially what the whole program's about. What is estimating, right? You can read this for yourself, but it's not guesstimating. It's not trying to just say, oh, I've got to get this project, so I'm going to I don't have time to do all the details and do the due diligence. I'm going to say, based on the last project, it's going to cost me another 10% on top of that. Let's just say out of guesswork. And so I'm going to bid $240,000. And I'm going to write that down. I'm going to submit it as a commitment. Okay, well, if you do that enough, your company's going to go under. So you don't want to do that. It's really important to do it properly. Properly is due diligence. Anyhow, so estimating is actually, besides the due diligence, it's actually an art. You're reducing the amount of risk and the amount of guesswork. There's going to be a bit of it. There's always a bit of guesswork, mainly because not everything gets to you on time. The deadlines are pretty quick. Some of the materials aren't readily available. Let's say your fabricators are all tied up and you're going off of last month's quotes. And so you'll say, oh, well, last month I wanted handrail for six ADA ramps. Okay, and that came out to an average of $11.25 a lineal foot. That's a fictitious number. Don't use it. It's just to give you an idea. So I'm taking a guess. I'm going to say there's some escalation costs. I'll throw an extra 50 cents a lineal foot on it. And then you do that. So there's some guesswork there. And also constructability. Not every, in fact, no projects are exactly the same. It's impossible for them to be the same. There's personalities among crews. There's different crews, temperatures. There's so many variables, which makes it really fun to be an estimator because you're doing some constructability guesses. You're designing with your teams to figure out what the best way to do it is. You're trying to figure out what your competitors are doing. And yeah, it's and how they would handle it, how they would approach it based on their crews, knowing what they can do and what their experience is, knowing their portfolios, all of that stuff gets played into the decisions. So it's really neat. We use material takeoffs and production rates uh, based on teams and partners and vendors, subcontractors, the whole works. We add those tools along with software to put it all together to sort of get an idea of where we're going to be. We love to analyze our competitors. It's not always available to us, but you can do quite a bit of it. Um, you probably see them time and time again. Not always, but for the most part, if you're bidding on the same type of market sector, you'll bump into the same folks. And you got to make sure that you're analyzing what their price was, if they beat you, and if they didn't beat you. It's important both ways. So getting to know your competitors is part of the game. Estimating is a high risk, high reward. If you take a risk and you cut all your profits out and all your contingencies out and you win the project, you still have to perform the project even at a loss. Sometimes it's a business decision so that you can get into that market sector or into that client. But that's not what we try to do. What we're trying to do is be profitable every time um, and not leave any money on the table. So what I mean by that is if there's three bidders, okay, everyone in that group has the basic cost. Everybody's going to get the vendor prices. It might be 10% more, 10% less based on how good your relationship is with the vendor. Um, Everyone's got to pay certain wages, at least prevailing wage or the local economy wage. If you're going union against union, then it's pretty straightforward what the wages are. Some people have to pay premiums to keep their guys. Some people pull right out of the hall, but they have to deal with the luck of the draw on experience. So there's a lot of play, but it's not that much difference in wages, not substantially to flip a win to a loss or a loss to a win. So there's a lot of that going on. And yeah, so everyone that's providing a price is pretty well set on how much it's going to cost. They have a good idea how much your competitors are going to pay, put out there because they have their costs. And then it comes down to the overhead. Who has the most conservative overhead? And then who's more hungry on the profit? Okay, so that gets you to your costs and coverage. What happens now is if you don't know who's actually going to bid on the project. So five people might have shown up, five companies might have shown up to the job walk, pre-bid job walk, but I've seen it in the past where none of them bid on it, and you're the only bidder, or it's just two of you. So you don't want to come in and just scraping by on the profit margins so that you get 3% profit margins. So you have to make a decision. At what point do you try to uh, I would say you want to be as profitable as possible, and still win the project. So you have to analyze how much you think your client, potential client, is willing to pay, what's in their budget, what's out of their budget, what's an absolute deal breaker, and then compare it to what your guess is on which competitors are going to be bidding. And that gap between the absolute budget, the deal breaker on your client, and your competition. That gap in there is where you make decisions on how profitable you're going to be. And let's say you hit it just right and you're 1% lower than the budget of your client, and you give them a guaranteed maximum price on your estimate. So it's right there. It's within his budget. He can get the funding. She can get the funding, whoever. And now your profit margins, because no one else bid, you're sitting at 25% profit margin, which is pretty good for a general contractor. All right, great. That's wonderful. But if you came in and you scraped it, if it's and someone else come in or no one else came in, then you would have left that 25%, you would have won at 3%, and you would have left all that money on the table. So that's where the the business decisions that happen after you get to your proposal prepped. And that's part of the game. It makes it fun. Um, the nice thing about it is if you do come in that tight and everything goes, all the stars line up, and you feel that you want to build a relationship with that customer, or they've got some additional work, but they're, you make a decision whether or not you want to give them a discount at the end of the project, not at the beginning, but at the end of the project. Say, hey, we made a killing on this job. Everything went well. You treated us great. Here's what we're going to do. Your next project, or we'll give you 10% back or something like that, um, on picking us. So thank you very much. And here you go. Or maybe you do whatever you need to do on that, to build that relationship. So you have that going for you. So that's kind of fun. All right. So I'm going to teach you how to estimate. So what is the market? So the market is obviously where you buy bids or buy projects. The market for some contractors is government projects, some are residential projects, commercial projects, institutional projects, and things like that. So, and there's subcategories and all that. You can be a subcontractor and be bidding to GCs, and you could be in every single one of those sectors. A sector is a sector of the market. Okay, the whole industry, a construction industry, uh, can be considered a market, but you have sectors within that. Contract. What are contract documents? So contract documents are the documents provided by the bid. So when projects are being bid, they may not be 100% already. Okay, so the drawings that come to you, they might be 80%, but they're going to put it out to bid because while it's being designed, they want to at least establish a GC and get things started, start digging, start breaking ground, start doing all the processes that have to happen. And so it's an incomplete document. So what they'll do is they'll send out a request for proposals uh, by different venues, and the GCs will look at it and they'll say, okay, based on this document, and everybody writes in their proposals, the documents, the dates, the names of the documents, all the addendums, and boom, that's what they write in there. And as of the date and time that the bid is done, submitted, and whatever was in the bid documents, which is typically a specification, an invitation, or solicitation. Sometimes there's most of it's in the specification, but sometimes they break it out and they give you important documents that they want, like a bid application or a contractor application approval, things like that. They'll break that out as a side note, but typically it's all in the specifications because that's your contract document. Then, of course, you have drawings and supplemental drawings. If in some cases you also have supplemental reports like good faith surveys, hazardous materials, underground storage tank information, maybe sometimes history of the project site, especially if there's history of contaminated waste or an old Navy shipyard, for example, where it could be unrealized, undiscovered hazardous waste, things like that. So you'll get that type of information, and then any addendums. So during the bidding process, the design team's still doing their job. Uh, there's a pre-bid conference, job walk. Everybody goes through. They got a week, maybe to 3 days to a week or something like that to submit for questions and things like that. And so they submit questions. The architect, design team, they answer back with addendum. Okay, and then they also will add an addendum with the pre-bid conference signatures of all the attendees. So that way everybody knows who was there. And if you're a subcontractor, you can look and see what GCs showed up to the site. Then you can call them or email them and find out whether or not they're truly bidding it. And if they are, voila. But that's part of the addendums. And so you'll get different addendums. And as the design changes a little bit, they might add a few things here or there or change a product out, or they might find out that the original products that they spec'd when we call our vendors and we find out that, hey, they don't make that product anymore, we'll send that to the architect and they'll send out an addendum with a new product, or at least something like that. And so there's addendums, and you have to say what addendums there are by date for them to be included in the bid and accepted. If you don't have them in the bid, your bid's going to be disqualified. Okay, so that's contract documents. Proposals and components thereof. So the proposals, that's the bid that I'm talking about. So a proposal is essentially what a GC proposes based on the contract documents that are effective as of the bid date. This is what we're proposing to do. It includes exclusions, clarifications, expectations, and sometimes they will go into great detail and put inclusions as well, especially during demolition. So there's some inclusions, and then we'll also have clauses like acts of God and things like that that are generally excluded on all projects. In some cases where it's not a government entity that you're bidding to or proposing to, you'll put your terms and conditions and maybe an example of your contract, stuff like that. Okay, so there are projects where you don't have a specification, or hell, even drawings. You get called up by a client, for example, onto let's say a warehouse client that has multiple warehouses. You get called by their facilities manager, come out and take a look. We want to do something here. And it's all by discussion. So no documents. And so when you're doing a proposal, you write essentially your entire scope of work into that proposal. And that's when you say included in this, excluded in this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, blah, blah. So that's what that is. Software, actually we use, for the most part, we'll use Excel, Google Sheets, we'll use Bluebeam. There's some other estimating software. I've used the Procore estimator as well, and that's fine. It's just an expensive program. I've also used SketchUp. So SketchUp estimator is a good thing. It's mainly written for residential, high-end residential, but you can program it for commercial. So when we're doing footings and stuff, I have it programmed that way. I find that it's nice. It's fine. It does take quite a bit of upfront work to get it all set up, whereas Bluebeam, so I personally can visualize the project in my head, but new estimators would not be able to do that. So sometimes SketchUp provides that extra visual uh, component that estimators might need to be trained on. It's great for training people on, especially new crews and things like that. They can actually see how the process works in SketchUp, and you can build estimates that way. So anyway, there's lots of software out there. Uh, Book of knowledge. So this is essentially a journal. And your journal, if a company's got some maturity to it, they'll have this book of knowledge. They'll call it whatever. They can call it all sorts of things. Um, productivity book, vendor book, whatever. It's typically a spreadsheet type of assemblage of tabs that covers everything, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be a database. So, or it could just be people's notes, old guys that have been doing this type of work for a long time, and then the computers came in, still use their journals, and they don't want to transfer all that crap over into uh, a computer. So you just have to look through their books. And they might have a series, a library of different um, lined notebooks, just like you had in college, where you fill it out with your pencil or pen, and there it is. This one's for all concrete, and this one's all doors, and you write your experiences down through the entire project so that you have data to compare it to. And then, of course, compatriots. Who are the compatriots? What are they? And how do they help? So, your compatriots are everywhere from your vendors to your subcontractors to your lawyers to your accountants to your team, your field team, your owner, essentially anyone that has information that will make a decision or who can provide uh, information that will reduce the amount of risk on your estimate. In level 2, you're going to learn how to do on-the-job training. You're going to be doing on-the-job training while you're doing level 2. So in level 2, you're going to learn how to find projects. And there's a lot of different avenues, and we'll go over that. You're going to learn how to sequence and schedule the effects of estimating and how it affects estimating, I mean. You're going, within that same thought, you will see the work breakdown structure that is typically used to help keep everything organized, and then also help with your book of knowledge. And it's, anyhow, there's a lot going on there. And then you'll go to pre-bid conferences. You're gonna shadow your estimator or your project manager or your salesman, whatever it is. You're gonna shadow and learn how to see what a pre-bid conference is all about and get an idea what you're dealing with. So when you do a pre-bid, you're looking around for access issues, uh, salmon habitat issues, or things, drains, storm drains, anything that can cause any type of additional costs or that might make it easier compared on your book of knowledge, your BOK, um, for reducing the amount of cost. So you might be able to come in at 0.75 versus at straight up costs because you see something that the other guys didn't see, the other competitors didn't see. All right, and so competitors and collaborators will be there. So at the pre-bids, you're going to talk with your competitors, get to know them. You're going to talk with your collaborators as well, subcontractors. The design team will be there. And so you'll be able to discuss it. And it's an open discussion. However, none of what you say or what is said there is applicable to your bidding on the project until you put it in written form, send it forward in a question or a request for information or RFI to the architect, and then it becomes part of the bid document and part of your contract documents at that point, and then they get the chance to answer and all that stuff. All right, and so vendors. So you'll have a pool of vendors. Those vendors are anyone that's supplying material and sometimes services to the job site, all right, to the project. And depending on how you relate with your vendors. So there are some vendors that if you have an account with and you've been doing a lot of work with them and you pay your bills on time, they'll give you a discount. There are some vendors, their shelf markups. So the price that they have are 30% higher than what you can buy at Home Depot, for example. Let's say that's the case. And it's because they're going to carry your project for 30 to 60 days before they get paid. So you're paying for that type of service. And other contractors, or excuse me, other vendors will supply to your job site. And they know they're going to, if they're the selected vendor, they're going to come to your job site a lot. And so there's some reduction and you pay per delivery, for example. There are some other funding partners for contractors who, if they sign up or agree to work with a funding partner, that funding partner might say you can only use these vendors. And it's because there's a relationship with those vendors through the funding partner, and there's a discount to the funding partner. And because the vendor is no longer carrying the burden of 60 days without pay, and your funding partner is carrying that burden, the vendor knows it's going to get paid right away in cash. It's a better deal. Anytime there's a cash deal, you can negotiate for a better deal. So keep that in mind. So that is another way to shave off a little percentage to be more competitive with your bid is by using a funding partner. Sometimes, because you still have to pay the funding partner's percentage. It's, it can be anywhere from 3.5% every 30 days to 6% every 30 days. It really depends. It shouldn't be 6%, but if you think of your credit card, it's 24% and you don't pay it for a year. But if you're going to pay it every 60 to 90 days, then you're right about, you're paying about 6%. So you think about that. And no, I don't recommend using your credit card. I think it's okay if you pay it off every time and you stay ahead of it. That's fine because you're getting points and whatever benefits that come with the card. But if you don't, you get behind. All your profit or all your markup that's on your products are eaten up. So that's a side thing. How to assemble takeoffs and generate material costs and estimates. So this is done with software and with counting, just basic counting. So most of what construction math is about is why am I blanking on it? Square footage, cubic footage, geometry. Okay, so linear length times width times height, and then triangles and circles and areas thereof, volumes, a cubic foot, square foot, that type of stuff. All right, so that's what you're going to learn in level 2. But mainly you're going to be on the job, so you get paid that type. You should be getting paid for that, or doing an internship. Level 3 on this is estimating its continued OJT. You'll learn how to calculate production rates, evaluate and doing crew analysis to generate the production rates, and how you can learn offsets and markups and things like that. Contingency planning, contingency pricing, all that. Constructability studies on how they aid estimates. So constructability, you're talking with your superintendent, your builder, your project manager, you're talking with engineers. The owner's requirements are going to be thrown in there. So that's like the owner's activities, right? The next one down. Let's say it's an active hospital. You're not allowed to shut down power. You can't plug into their power. You have to come up with your own power. You've got to figure out a way in. You've got to move people around. There's a whole lot of things that can impact the estimate. So you're going to learn all the facets. I wouldn't say all the facets in level 2. It takes years to learn all the facets. And even that, it changes as we progress in construction, means and methods. So proposal writing, you're going to learn how to write a proposal, do subcontracting, bid, and incorporation. So your subcontractors are going to provide you with estimates, and you got to compare one subcontractor to the other. So if you're a GC and you have a favored subcontractor, sometimes they'll just say, hey, give me a price, and you go with that guy or girl. If for some reason it's more competitive and you're trying to get an edge against your other GCs, then you might go to the pool of plumbers, for example, that you've worked with in the past or that you know. And you say, hey, the three of you are going to, you don't by standard practice tell the other subs that you're not shopping around, but you're asking for competitive bids. It is understood that that is the way this game is played. So you reach out, you say, I need a bid from you. We're bidding on this competitively. So you're going to get 3 different bids from plumbers. You're going to look at those bids and you're going to see who excluded what, who included what. Are they complete? And do they meet the specifications that are on the project and the drawings? Okay. If that's the case, and you're doing apples to apples, they should be close. They should be within 10 or 15% of each other, depending on what their overheads are like and their labor costs. So you take a look at that and you evaluate those two, and the one that's you make a business decision based on that. So that's your sub bid incorporation. Writing proposals, we'll go over that ad nauseum. There's so many ways to write it, and it depends on what the contract documents say. So sometimes you don't write any proposal at all. You're just providing a number on their form, acknowledging that you're going to abide by their specifications and their contract. So there's a lot to be learned with that. You're going to learn contractual, all the different types of contracts at that point in level 3, and then submit bids and follow up. So submitting bids, there's just a small process. You do some follow up. There's a process there, and you'll learn all about that. And then at the very end, it's after a year or so when you're level 3 training, you've finished up, you have some knowledge. Now it's just practice, practice, practice. So you're going to practice all the stuff and you're going to keep going over and over and over, but it's not boring. It continuously, you're stimulated because every project's different, every product's different, design teams talk differently, owners are different. Your own teams are different. The configurations change from moment to moment. It's a moving puzzle in 3 to 4 dimensions, sometimes 5 dimensions. So, and I'm counting time and 4. You got your spatial dimensions, length times width times height plus time over certain criteria, and then you're moving everything else about by deliveries and things like that. So there's multiple time tables being played in there. Plus there's other stuff. Anyway, so there's that. So you're going to learn more and more, and then you're going to execute estimates to the point where in 5 years, you should be doing all of this without any help other than going through the constructability with your with your teams to develop a per project estimate, but you'll be doing all the work. getting it done, and then you'll have subordinates. You need to learn how to work with your people and start training the next folks because it's a process. At some point, you can decide to go to project management, get your certificate in project management, construction management, or go to a college and get your degree. Highly recommend that you do that. What you're learning here is more or less a, um, primer for getting you in the door so that you can get some experience and then go and find out whether you like estimating or you want to move on to project management. So you can estimate and have a wonderful life estimating the whole time. Or if you want to essentially become uh, a project manager or a superintendent, mostly the superintendents come out of the trades because they're experienced builders and they're more hands-on. Um, whereas a project manager is more on the contractual side. So very often you will see builders become their own business owners. That's essentially what happened with me. But you'll more than likely in commercial and government, you'll see that the project managers become the CEOs of companies. And mainly it's because they have such a hands-on in negotiating and working with contracts, working with design teams and lawyers um, and and owners. So they'll build huge relationships. They'll spend tons of time networking, whereas the superintendent doesn't always do that. Superintendent is really the key figure on a job site and very responsible for what happens on the job site. It doesn't generally have a lot of time to go out and handshake and I mean, they do build a reputation with owners and design teams, but they don't go out to all the um, sales meetings and networking programs that project managers do. And then project managers are prone to go from one company to another to build relationships that way and get experience in different parts of the sectors. So they might work in hospital sector here, go over there, work in the civil sector. So you might decide that as a estimator, you'd like to go to get your PM degree, and that's great. The nice thing about it is you can do estimating throughout college and provide a fantastic amount of value to a company while you're doing both. So I recommend it. That's about what this program's all about. So hopefully you'll enjoy it, and that's about it. We'll talk again.